Here we are talking about pay for performance and other financial incentives. So we're going to talk about motivation theories and incentive pay, sales force motivation, incentives for managers and executives, and then organization-wide incentive plans. So what is motivation? The motivation behind incentive plans? Let's take a look. So Frederick Taylor popularized using financial incentives or financial rewards paid to workers whose production exceeded those predetermined standards in the late 1800s. Taylor was concerned with what was called systematic soldiering. Sounds crazy, right? The tendency of employees to produce at a minimum acceptable level. Taylor knew he could harness additional energy at work to achieve productivity gains. Productivity is the ratio of outputs divided by inputs. In pursuing his aim, Taylor turned to financial incentives. He made three major contributions in the late 1800s. First, he determined a fair day's work using standards of outputs. Second, he's known as the father of scientific management approach. His approach emphasized the improvement of work methods. And finally, he recognized the use of incentive pay to reward those whose outputs exceeded standards. So managers often use two terms synonymously with incentive pay. All incentive plans are pay for performance plans. They all tie employees' pay to the employee's performance. Some limit the term to group or team incentive plans, but most use variable pay to include any performance-based incentive. So incentive pay, tying workers' pay to their performance, is popular. The problem is that linking pay to performance is easier said than done. Research on incentive plans is sketchy, but one older study found that just 28% of the 2,600 US workers it surveyed said that their company's incentive plans motivated them. Employees don't see a strong connection between pay and performance. And if they can't see that connection, it's not going to really influence their behavior, right? So equally problematic is the fact that some incentives incentivize the wrong behavior. Another big reason for incentive plans, often dismal results, is the fact that incentives that may motivate some people won't motivate others. So problems again. Several motivation theories have particular relevance to designing incentive plans. So motivators and Frederick Herzberg. Frederick Herzberg said, the best way to motivate someone is to organize the job so that doing it provides the challenge and recognition we all need to help satisfy higher level needs for things like accomplishment and recognition. These needs are relatively insatiable, says Herzberg. So challenging work provides a sort of built-in motivation generator. Doing things to satisfy workers' lower level needs for things like better pay and working conditions just keeps the person from becoming dissatisfied. So he calls those factors hygienes. So he's like, you know, there's certain things that you just have to do because if you don't do them, people are basically going to be unhappy. And then those things that you do that will motivate them. So instead of relying on hygiene's, managers' interests in creating a self-motivated workforce should emphasize job content or motivator factors. Demotivators and Edward Dicey or Dicey, I don't know how to say his name. So he was a psychologist, and he postulated a potential downside to relying too heavily on extrinsic rewards. And he said they might backfire. DC found that extrinsic rewards could at times actually detract from a person's intrinsic motivation. The point may be stated thus: be cautious in devising incentive pay for highly motivated employees, lest you inadvertently demean and detract from the desire they have to do a job out of a sense of responsibility. Victor Vroom has the expectancy theory, and in general, people won't pursue rewards they find unattractive or where the odds of success are very low. So psychologist Victor Vroom's expectancy motivation theory echoes these common sense observations. He says a person's motivation to exert some level of effort depends on three things: the person's expectancy in terms of probability that his or her effort will lead to performance, instrumentality, or the perceived connection, if any, between successful performance and actually obtaining the rewards, and valence, which represents the perceived value the person attaches to the reward. And then behavior motivation reinforcement by B.F. Skinner. So using incentives also assumes the manager understands how consequences affect behavior. Psychologist B.F. Skinner's findings are useful here. Managers apply Skinner's principles using behavior modification. So behavior modification means changing behavior through rewards or punishments that are contingent on performance. For managers, behavior modification boils down to two main principles. First, that behavior that appears to lead to a positive consequent or reward tends to be repeated, whereas behaviors that appear to lead to negative consequent punishment tend not to be repeated. Second, that managers can therefore get someone to change his or her behavior by providing them properly scheduled rewards or punishments. If you remember, B.F. Skinner is the one who did a bunch of lab rat tests. Main incentives for individual employees. Piecework. Piecework is the oldest and still most popular individual incentive plan. Piecework involves paying the worker a specified amount for each piece or unit he or she produces. Straight piecework entails a strict proportionality between results and rewards regardless of output. The standard hour plan is like the piecework plan with one difference. Instead of getting a rate per piece, the worker gets paid a premium equal to percentage by his or her rate for production exceeds the standard. So piecework has advantages. If you can work faster, you get paid more, right? Disadvantage is that the worker, I don't know, the worker can get tied to how much money they need and perform based on how much money they need. So when I was in high school, I went to visit a friend on several occasions, and she worked in a factory where they made plasticware, forks, spoons, knives, and she was packaging them and putting them into plastic bags. And they would give her a bin of forks, spoons, knives, and depending on the job she was doing, she would be putting 6 of them or 12 of them into a plastic bag, and she had to put them in. It was very manual, guys. So she'd have to count them and put them into a plastic bag and then stand them up. And then she could take them home. And so when I would go to visit during the day while she was at school, I would work, and she would take it back and get paid for it. And however many I did, she'd pay me cash for it because she was going to get paid extra for that piecework anyway. And so anytime I went to her house, we would work hours and hours and hours and get paid like a whole bunch more money. And that was piecework, and I loved it. I would go up to her house for a week. And while she was at school for, I don't know, from 8 to 3, I would work like mad, and I would do the quantity that she needed to do, and I would do my extra so that when she came home in the evening, we could play. We could go out and do stuff, and she didn't have to work. And then in the evening, when we were back at home, after we went out and did whatever teenagers want to do, we would watch movies and we would continue doing our piecework. And I don't remember how much money I made. It wasn't that much money, but for me as a high schooler, it seemed like a lot of money. But that was piecework. That was my experience, guys, in my lifetime with piecework. And I was always impressed with how much I could make. And then, so now more recently, I have this Etsy store, Puppy Promise Shop, and I make bandanas. And during the pandemic, I was making face masks. We were making bandanas and face masks matching for dog owners and their dogs. Bandanas for the dogs, masks for the owners. And I started assembly line, making them assembly line so that I would know how much time it took me. And we were always joking about how these were the most expensive and underpriced masks because we were taking what my salary is at Andrews and, dividing my time, which you cannot do. But anyway, we were having fun with it. And if I cut a bandana out, cut it out, one bandana, and sew it, okay, at the beginning, it would take me 45 minutes. If I cut 10 of them out, okay, and sew them assembly line and divide the time up, it takes me 20 minutes each. If I cut 20 of them out at once, and I've never tried to do more than 20 at one time because I haven't needed to, but if I've done 20 of them back to back, cut them out, assembly line, sew them, it actually takes me 12 minutes each. So my little study in piecework and assembly line and how to be more efficient and whatever, really really proved a point of how much time you can save. And actually, if I were handing it off for someone else to do, what would I do to incentivize them to be more productive, right? So merit pay as an incentive. Merit pay or a merit raise is any salary increase the firm awards to an individual employee based on his or her individual performance. It is different from a bonus in that it usually becomes part of the employee's base salary, whereas bonuses are generally a one-time payment. So although the term merit pay can apply to incentive raises given to any employee, the term is more often used for professional or office or clerical employees. So you can have a lump sum once a year, and it does not make the raise part of the employee's salary. So that would be kind of more like a bonus. Or it could be, you could have it be something that becomes part of their pay. And it is always tied, as far as I know, it is always tied to performance appraisals and an award based on performance. So professional employees are those whose work involves the application of learned knowledge to the solution of the employer's problems, like lawyers, engineers, and so on. Making incentive pay decisions for professional employees is challenging. For one thing, firms usually pay professionals well anyway. For another, they're already driven by the desire to produce high caliber work. However, it's unrealistic to assume that people like Google engineers work only for professional gratification. Few firms work harder to maintain competitive incentives for professionals. Dual career ladders are another way to manage professionals' pay. At many employers, higher pay requires rerouting from like engineering into management, but not all professionals want management. So many employers institute one path for managers, another one for technical experts, allowing the technical experts to earn higher pay without switching to management. Employers often supplement financial incentives with non-financial and recognition-based awards. So recognition programs refer to formal programs, so employee of the month programs and others. So social recognition programs, performance feedback programs, and things like that. So here's a list of recognitions. And I mean, the sky's the limit. There's all sorts of programs. I think it's interesting, a bigger desk, bigger office or cubicle. You know, people always talk about the corner office and so on. So job design, although not usually considered an incentive, job design can significantly impact employee motivation and retention. A study by Harvard Business School researchers concluded that job design is a primary driver of employee engagement. A study by Simpson Consulting concluded that job responsibility and feedback were the 5th and 7th most important drivers of employee engagement. Another study concluded that challenging work ranked as the 7th most important driver for attracting employees. Job design is thus a useful part of an employer's total rewards program. The pros and cons of commissions versus straight pay for salespeople. So some salespeople want to be paid straight commission. Other salespeople would like base plus commission. And some companies don't give them a choice. So as one survey said, the performance metrics given to the sales team must drive behaviors that will help the company's strategy to be successful. Unfortunately, the same survey, oh, the sun just came out, guys. Just a second. No, it's too dark. Okay, so the same survey also found that 30% of respondents believe their sales compensation program rewards the right behaviors not well or very poorly. So employers are therefore moving to align how they measure and reward their salespeople with their firm's strategic goals. So sales compensation plans may focus on salary, commissions, or some combination to drive sales objectives. So the salary plan, some firms pay salespeople fixed salaries, perhaps with occasional incentives in the forms of bonuses, sales contest prizes, and the like. Straight salary makes sense when the main task involves prospecting or finding new clients or account servicing. The straight salary approach also makes it easier to switch salesperson's territories, and it can foster sales staff loyalty. The main disadvantage is that it can demotivate high-performing salespeople. Commission plan or straight commission pay plan pays salespeople only for results, and it tends to attract high-performing salespeople. The downside of it is that they may not want to maintain those people. They're always looking for the new sale. So they really don't want to service a small account, and they may not want to pursue the hard to sell. So a combination plan with a base plus incentive pay is pretty popular. And 60 to 70% base pay with 30 to 40% incentive is pretty popular. In setting sales quotas and commission rates, the goal is to motivate the sales activity but avoid excessive commissions. Unfortunately, the tendency to set commission rates informally often reduces plans' effectiveness. So setting effective quotas is an art. And, you know, it takes a lot of back and forth, a lot of trial and error, and tracking people's time and experience. So yeah, bottom line is it's an art. The main incentives for managers and executives. So managers play a crucial role in divisional and company-wide profitability, and employers therefore put considerable thought into how to reward them. Most managers get short-term and long-term incentives in addition to salary. Short-term incentives might include annual incentive plans, discretionary bonuses, retention bonuses, manager's share of any profit sharing plan, and so on. Whether consolidating operations or pursuing growth, firms can't fully implement most strategies in just 1 to 2 years. So the long-term signals you send managers via long-term incentives can determine whether a firm's strategy actually succeeds. And then we're back to Sarbanes-Oxley, where you do need to be very careful with people's responsibilities and the fact that how decisions are made and who makes the decisions. Basically, executives are held liable for poor decisions in a corporation. For better or worse, employers are shifting away from long-term incentives to put more emphasis on short-term performance and incentives. Most firms have annual bonus plans for motivating managers' short-term performance. 3 factors influence one's bonus: eligibility, fund size, and individual performance. Eligibility, the employers first decide eligibility. So job level or title, the base salary, the officer status, are, how they decide the eligibility. Then they decide the fund size, and then they decide the individual awards. The college that I taught in Colorado would publish the fund amount and the formula, and every employee could calculate how much their bonus was. So as soon as they knew what the fund was, they would publish it, and we could, like, even 6 weeks before we were going to get it, we could calculate it and know within a few dollars how much money we were going to get for our bonus. And it was kind of cool because it always came out around Christmas, and we would know, kind of like our Christmas bonus, how much we were going to be getting. And I considered it significant. My smallest bonus was like $700 and some, and my largest one was around $2,700. So at that college. So, it made a nicer Christmas. It gave us some extra cash to spend on the kids. So it was always nice to get it, and we always knew how much was coming in, so we could count on it. And anyway, always made us feel really good about the company. So employers use long-term incentives to inject a long-term perspective into their executive decisions. And they use it to boost, a manager can conceivably boost profitability by reducing plant maintenance, for instance, or to plan things that are really long-term that will have big impact on a company long-term. And the incentives are like stock options usually, that will help the company make those big decisions. 2 problems plague executive incentives: short-termism and lack of range. So many plans encourage short-term thinking and tying the incentive to one metric rather than several encourage counterproductive behavior. So experts suggest several solutions. First, use multiple metrics, and second, reward performance relative to competitors. And then third, include non-financial targets. And there's always the ethics of incentives. People put their efforts where they know they'll be rewarded. And so you want to make sure that you are giving them a broad perspective. So up to this point, we focused on individual employee incentives like piecework, commissions, and executive bonuses. Let's look now for incentives for teams and employee-wide. So firms increasingly rely on teams to manage their work. So pay incentives to the teams for team performance is becoming more widely used. And these could be profit sharing plans based on an entire team. The Scanlon plan incentive was developed in 1937, and it's encouraging cooperation, involvement, and sharing. Gain sharing plans, at-risk pay plans. So put some portion of the employees' normal pay at risk if they don't meet their goals, in return for possibly obtaining a much larger bonus if they exceed their goals. Employee stock ownership plans, where over time employees gain more and more ownership of the business. Kind of cool. I've worked with several ESOPs where the owner is planning on retiring, and over time basically sells off the business to the employees. And when he retired or she retired, the business then went to the employees. And I've seen some really successful ESOPs. And then some companies offer broad-based stock option plans in which all or most employees can participate and purchase stocks. So how to use incentives to improve employee engagement. A survey provides some insights into the role of incentive pay. Of approximately 6,300 compensations professionals the researchers solicited, here's what the researchers found. First, although the compensation professionals believed that total rewards programs can influence employee engagement, many of them did not specifically include employee engagement as one of the goals of the compensation plans. Second, they concluded that the most direct ways to encourage employee engagement with incentives are to measure the extent to which supervisors are encouraging their subordinates to engage, and to use incentives to reward supervisors for improving employee engagement. And third, even more important than the rewards themselves, getting employees involved in developing the rewards programs was the gold standard for building employee cooperation and commitment. So make improving employee engagement a formal target of your compensation plan. Appraise and incentivize your supervisors partly based on whether they take steps to improve their subordinates' engagement, and if possible, let employees participate in creating their own compensation plan. And there you go. Once again, a lot of ideas, a lot of plans, and hopefully some good ideas that will inspire you in the future, whether you become an employee somewhere as you become an employee, or if you go into HR.